Our bear stance renegade row 2 push-up is a combo move focusing on the muscles in the chest, shoulders, triceps, as well as those muscles in the upper back and the rear delts, a little bit in the core and the quads and the calves as well. So it is more of a total body movement. You should be comfortable with a bear stance renegade row and a push-up individually before progressing to this exercise. If you are not, go back, watch those 2 demonstration videos before progressing on to this one. You'll have a better base of support or a better foundation before trying this combo move. So, jumping right into it today, remember for that bear stance renegade row, we want those wrists and those weights directly underneath of those shoulders, so we're pressing straight down on them. We don't want them out wide here. We don't want them up and forward here. And the reason for that being is not only will it create more strain on the wrists, but we're not pushing directly down on them now. We're pushing out at an angle, and it's going to want to roll the dumbbells. So make sure they're directly underneath of the shoulders. We're then going to get on all fours here with that back nice and straight, and we're going to try to get those knees directly underneath of those hips. I'm going to dig my toes into the floor here, and then I'm going to lift my knees up about 1 or 2 inches off of the ground. This is my bear stance position. So lift those knees up off of the ground. I'm going to hold right here, and then I'm going to perform that renegade row, 1 on each side, keeping that core nice and tight, and then I'm going to hinge forward, dropping down into that push-up. Right back into that bear stance position, right back into that renegade row. This is a more complex or harder exercise, so if you're not quite ready for this, that's fine. Go into a normal renegade row push-up. You can do those as well. If you want to look up our renegade row to push-up video without the bear stance, that'll be a little bit easier version than this exercise. However, if you're wanting a challenge, this is a great exercise for that. There's 2 different ways you can do this, an easier way and a tougher way. The easier way is going to do that bear stance position here for that renegade, and then drop down onto the knees to go into that push-up. Then coming up, lifting the knees on off, and going back into that bear stance renegade. The tougher way is keeping those knees elevated throughout that entire movement. So doing that bear stance renegade, and then trying to keep them off of the ground as we come down into that push-up. So that is your tougher option. You will see that my hips are staying up in the air for this exercise. I know I normally tell you on our push-ups to drop those hips down and create that straight line. However, when we're in a bear stance position, that's not going to be possible. So this is one of the few exercises to where when you do that push-up, the hips will remain up in the air. You can see that I'm not having my hips down like this like I normally tell you in a push-up. I'm keeping them elevated as I go into that push-up. My butt is staying up in the air, and that's okay. We don't want to be doing this all the time, but for this specific exercise, when you're in a bear stance position, your hips will remain up in the air. You'll feel like you're lowering your chest and shoulders down while that butt is staying on up, and that is okay. It will typically be a little bit tougher performing this one because you have more of your weight pushed forward onto your torso for that exercise than the weight distributed back. So be aware, it will be a little tougher. Start on your knees for these ones if you need to, and then remember, progress up to where those knees are staying elevated off of the ground. Key mistakes on this exercise: number 1, not having good hand positioning, so really make sure that those hands are directly under the shoulders. Number 2, not keeping those knees elevated throughout that exercise, so having them stay on the ground. Remember, that's not a regression for this exercise. That's not the easier version, just leaving the knees down. We won't be working what we want to work. So that regression, that easier version, is going to a normal Renegade 2 push-up. Like I said, you can go watch that video if you would like. But if you're doing this one, make sure to keep those knees elevated off of the ground just 1 or 2 inches throughout that movement. If you want it the toughest, keep it elevated throughout the push-up. If you want it a little easier, you could drop it down for that push-up. So slow it down, focus on those key points, make sure you're doing it correctly first, start easier, and then you can progress up to the harder options for this exercise, but slow it down. This is an exercise that can be a little tricky at first if you're not used to performing it.